The stars of the galaxy shone brightly, but the Iscari homeworld, nestled in a quiet corner of the universe, was in pain. A deadly plague was sweeping across their peaceful planet, infecting their people with no cure in sight. The Iscari, a bird-like race known for their art and music, had always lived in harmony with nature. But now, the disease was tearing them apart. Cities were abandoned, homes left in ruin, and the Iscari people could do nothing but watch their world slowly collapse. Desperate, the Iscari sent out a signal, a call for help, hoping that someone, anyone, would hear them. The message was simple: "We are dying. Please help." It echoed through the galaxy, floating in the vast emptiness of space. The Galactic Union, a coalition of powerful civilizations, received the distress signal. The Iscari were small in comparison to many other species, with no great political influence or military power. In the eyes of the Union, they were not important. They were seen as a minor race, one that didn't matter enough to waste resources on. The Union had its priorities, and the Iscari were not on the list. One by one, the powerful member species of the Galactic Union ignored the message, dismissing it as a problem too small to solve. The Iscari's world was slipping into darkness, and no one cared enough to stop it. But then, something unexpected happened. The signal reached Earth. Earth was a young member of the Galactic Union, often overlooked by the larger, more established species. Humanity had made its mark in the galaxy with its curiosity, resilience, and determination, but it had not yet proven itself as a major player. Earth's leaders were known for their kindness, their willingness to fight for justice, and their deep sense of empathy. When they received the Iscari's message, they didn't dismiss it. They didn't turn away. Instead, they chose to act. The decision was made by Captain Alyssa Grant, a seasoned officer in the Earth fleet, and her team aboard the starship Concordia. Alyssa was a leader who had always believed that humanity's strength lay not in their weapons or technology, but in their hearts. She had seen injustice before, but this was different. The Iscari were dying, and the galaxy was doing nothing about it. She couldn't stand by and watch. "We're going to help them," Alyssa said to her crew. "The Iscari may not have the power to defend themselves, but we have the power to save them. No one else will, but we will." Her words were met with silent agreement. The crew of the Concordia had always followed Alyssa's lead, trusting her judgment. Now they would go to a world in desperate need, even if it meant breaking away from the norms of the Galactic Union. Alyssa's resolve was unshakable. She was determined to make sure the Iscari did not face their end alone. The Concordia set course for the Iscari homeworld. The journey was long, and the crew knew they would face challenges along the way. But the thought of saving an entire race, of showing the galaxy that humans cared, gave them strength. They didn't just want to save the Iscari. They wanted to remind the universe that compassion and action mattered more than power or politics. As the Concordia sailed through space, Alyssa sat in her command chair, her mind racing. What would they find when they arrived? Would the Iscari still be alive, or would they have succumbed to the plague by the time they reached them? How would they be received? Would the Iscari trust them, or would they see humans as just another race trying to take advantage of their vulnerability? Alyssa knew there were risks. She knew the Galactic Union might not approve of Earth's involvement, but she didn't care. This was the right thing to do. It was what humanity was all about. Back on Earth, the people had already started to hear about the mission. News spread quickly, and soon, everyone was talking about the brave humans who had decided to step up and help a forgotten race. The Iscari were far away, but the message from Earth was clear. We are here. We care. As the Concordia approached the Iscari homeworld, Alyssa looked out the window at the distant planet, her heart heavy but hopeful. They were going to make a difference. It didn't matter that no one else would help. Humanity would. And that was all that mattered. The stars were vast, but in that moment, Earth felt closer to the Iscari than ever before. The Iscari homeworld loomed large in the viewports of the starship Concordia. The planet, once lush and full of life, now looked fragile and vulnerable from the stars. It was a world on the brink of destruction, a world that had been forgotten by the larger galaxy, abandoned in its time of need. Humanity had arrived, but the Iscari were uncertain about what they would find. Captain Alyssa Grant stood on the bridge of the Concordia, her eyes focused on the planet below. The ship was just entering the atmosphere, and the mission ahead weighed heavily on her. This was more than just a rescue operation. It was a chance for humanity to prove itself as something greater than a species that followed orders. It was a chance to show the galaxy that compassion and action still had a place in the universe. "We're entering the atmosphere, Captain," the navigator, Lieutenant Hargrove, reported. "The Iscari city is in sight. They're waiting for us." Alyssa nodded, giving a quick glance to her crew. They were all prepared, but there was still uncertainty in the air. What would the Iscari think of them? Would they see humanity as just another powerful race trying to take advantage of their weakness? Or would they accept their help with open arms? "Prepare the landing team," Alyssa ordered. "Let's make this work." The Concordia descended toward the Iscari city, a place that once held vibrant art galleries, beautiful music halls, and towering buildings filled with life. Now, the streets were quiet, almost eerie. A few Iscari remained, their wings folded tightly against their backs, their faces gaunt from sickness and fear. The sight was heartbreaking. This was a race on the edge of extinction, and they needed help. Real help, not just empty promises. As the Concordia touched down, the landing ramp lowered, and Alyssa, along with a small team of doctors and engineers, made their way to the surface. The Iscari waited for them, standing silently near the entrance to their city. They were an elegant species, with smooth feathers that shimmered in the light, but their once proud posture was now slumped, weighed down by the burden of the plague. Alyssa stepped forward, her heart heavy as she approached the group of Iscari leaders. They were a tall species with feathers that glowed like silver in the sunlight, but their faces were marked by sorrow. One of the leaders, a female Iscari named Vasira, stepped forward. Her wings fluttered slightly, a gesture of caution rather than greeting. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice filled with both suspicion and hope. "You come from Earth, but why? Why would you come to a world that is dying?" Alyssa met her gaze, her voice steady and sincere. "We came to help. Earth is a young world, but we care deeply about others. We know the galaxy has turned its back on you, but we won't. We are here to do everything we can to help save your people." Vasira looked at Alyssa for a long moment, her eyes searching for any sign of deceit, but all she saw was truth. There were no strings attached to the offer. Humanity wasn't asking for anything in return. It was rare for anyone in the galaxy to be that selfless. "You believe we can be saved?" Vasira asked, her voice softer now, touched by the weight of the situation. "We believe," Alyssa replied, offering a small smile. "And we have the skills to help. We brought doctors, scientists, and engineers. Together, we can find a way to heal the plague. But we need your trust, and we need to work together." Vasira hesitated for a moment before nodding slowly. "You may be the only hope we have left," she said, her voice filled with a mixture of sadness and cautious optimism. "But we will need time to see if we can trust you." Alyssa understood. The Iscari had been betrayed by the galaxy before, and they had every right to be wary of outsiders. But Alyssa knew that time was running out. They couldn't waste a moment. "We'll earn that trust," Alyssa said firmly. "But right now, we need to start working. Your scientists and ours can work together to find a solution. We'll do everything we can to help your people." The Iscari leaders agreed, and the human team quickly got to work. While doctors began treating the sick, engineers began assessing the planet's infrastructure, looking for ways to improve the supply of clean water and food. Earth's medical technology was far more advanced than the Iscari's, and soon, the human doctors were able to create a treatment that began easing the symptoms of the plague. It wasn't a cure, but it was progress. something the Iscari hadn't seen in months. As the days passed, Alyssa and her crew worked tirelessly, side by side with the Iscari. The differences between the two species were clear: different cultures, different ways of thinking, but they shared a common goal: survival. Slowly but surely, the Iscari began to believe that humanity's intentions were genuine. And as they worked together, a bond began to form, one built on mutual respect and shared hope. For the first time in a long while, the Iscari dared to believe in a future. And that future had a name: Earth. The days passed quickly on the Iscari homeworld. The human team worked tirelessly, never once slowing down. With every passing day, the city began to show signs of life again. The plague, though still present, was no longer the shadow it had once been. The treatment developed by Earth's doctors was having a positive effect. The Iscari were beginning to recover, though they were not yet free from the threat that had nearly wiped them out. Captain Alyssa Grant watched as the Iscari slowly regained some strength. She stood in the center of the city, her gaze drifting across the landscape. The city was not as it once was, but it was no longer dying. It was a world in the process of healing. Vasira, the leader of the Iscari, approached Alyssa, her wings fluttering slightly in the breeze. She had been watching her people with a quiet sense of gratitude, but also concern. The Iscari had never trusted outsiders, and their distrust of other species ran deep. But as she watched the humans work, as she saw the kindness and determination in their eyes, she couldn't help but wonder if there was more to this human race than she had ever imagined. "You've done more than we could ever have hoped for," Vasira said, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "We thought our end was near. We thought the galaxy had forgotten us." Alyssa smiled gently. "The galaxy may have turned away, but we didn't. Earth may be young, but we believe in something greater than ourselves. We believe in helping others." Vasira nodded, her eyes searching the horizon. "But will the galaxy allow you to continue helping us?" Her voice was filled with uncertainty. The Iscari knew that many other species in the galaxy would not be pleased with humans stepping in to save them. The Iscari were small and unimportant in the grand scheme of the galaxy, and the larger civilizations often saw them as insignificant. Would Earth face consequences for their actions? Alyssa's smile remained, though there was a hint of determination in her eyes. "The galaxy can say what it wants. We will do what we believe is right, no matter the consequences." Vasira felt a sense of awe toward the humans. They were not acting out of self-interest or politics. They were acting out of pure compassion. She had never seen anything like it. The other civilizations would never act this way. They cared only about their own power and position, not the lives of those who were weaker. But Earth was different. "Perhaps we were wrong," Vasira said quietly. "Perhaps we underestimated you." "We don't expect your trust right away," Alyssa replied. "But we will prove it over time. You'll see that we mean what we say. Our actions will speak louder than any words." The Iscari leader considered Alyssa's words. There was something in the captain's voice that made her believe. It was not just talk. It was a promise, and Vasira could feel it in her heart. She had seen the humans fight for their survival against much stronger enemies, and she had witnessed their kindness. Maybe the humans could be the partners they had longed for, the allies they could depend on. As the days turned into weeks, Alyssa and her crew continued to work alongside the Iscari, helping them rebuild their cities and recover from the plague. The Iscari had always been an artistic race, and as they regained their strength, they began to create again beautiful paintings, intricate sculptures, and music that filled the air once more. Their culture was coming back to life, bit by bit. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Alyssa sat on a balcony overlooking the bustling streets. The people of the Iscari were laughing again, their wings shimmering in the golden light. The sound of music played softly in the distance, a melody that seemed to echo through the streets and carry hope on the breeze. Vasira approached her, standing silently beside the captain for a moment. "It's hard to believe we were once on the edge of extinction," she said quietly. Alyssa nodded, her gaze still focused on the lively city below. "It's amazing what a little help can do. But it's not just us. You did the hard part. You survived. Now, you're rebuilding." The two women stood together in silence, watching the Iscari reclaim their world. It was a small victory, but it was one that felt as though it had the power to change everything. The Iscari would never be the same, and neither would the humans. They had found a new kind of connection, one that transcended species and politics. "We've learned something, Captain," Vesera said after a long pause. "We've learned that there is strength in kindness, and perhaps that's the greatest strength of all." Alyssa turned to the Iscari leader and smiled. "That's the strength humanity believes in, and will always stand by you." As the night fell, the city grew quiet once more, but it was no longer filled with fear. It was filled with the promise of a new beginning, a future where the Iscari, with the help of their human allies, could rise once again. And perhaps, just perhaps, it was the start of something bigger, something that could change the galaxy forever. The Iscari had begun to heal, their strength returning slowly but surely. The humans had done everything they could to help, and now it seemed the worst of the plague was behind them. The cities were alive again with activity, and people were starting to believe that there might be a future for their species after all. But Alyssa Grant and her crew knew that this was only the beginning. Even though the Iscari were recovering, the galaxy was still watching, and not all of it was happy to see humans lending a hand. While many people had welcomed the human efforts, there were others, more powerful, more dangerous, who didn't like seeing Earth interfere in a situation that didn't directly concern them. The Iscari were not a major power in the galaxy, and many considered them insignificant, especially compared to the great empires that controlled the stars. To these empires, the Iscari's suffering was just another casualty in the never-ending game of galactic politics. One evening, as Alyssa stood on the Concordia's bridge, the ship's communications officer, Lieutenant Rivera, interrupted her thoughts. "Captain," Rivera said, her voice tense, "we've received a message from the Imperial Council." Alyssa's heart sank. The Imperial Council was made up of some of the galaxy's most powerful species, and they rarely paid attention to anyone outside their circles, unless it was to silence them. She knew what this could mean. "Put it through," Alyssa replied, her voice steady despite the concern rising in her chest. A hologram flickered to life in front of her, revealing a tall, imposing figure with dark blue skin and piercing yellow eyes. It was a representative from the Xanthel Empire, one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. The Xanthel were known for their military might and ruthless tactics, and their leader, High Commander Veltrax, was not someone to be taken lightly. "Captain Alyssa Grant," Veltrax said in a low, menacing voice, "I trust you are aware of the consequences of your actions on Iscari Prime." Alyssa kept her expression neutral, though her mind raced. She had expected this. The Xanthel would never tolerate interference in a situation they saw as beneath them. Still, she had to remain calm. "We came to offer aid," Alyssa said, choosing her words carefully. "The Iscari were in need, and we have provided the help they required. The situation is improving." Veltrax's eyes narrowed. "The Iscari are a dying race. They are of no strategic value to us or anyone else. Your involvement in their recovery is unwelcome. The Galactic Council has already made it clear that no one is to intervene in matters concerning the Iscari." Alyssa's pulse quickened, but she didn't show it. The Council may have made their decision, but Earth is not bound by their rules. "We believe in helping those in need." "Your naivety is admirable," Veltrax said, though his tone was cold. "But it is also foolish. You are opening a door that should remain closed. The galaxy does not look kindly on those who disrupt the natural order." Alyssa took a deep breath. She had expected a warning, but hearing it spoken so plainly made her realize the gravity of the situation. The Xanthel were not just upset. They were threatening. "We will continue to assist the Iscari," Alyssa said firmly. If that is a problem, then you can take it up with us directly. But we are not turning our back on them." Veltrax was silent for a moment, his yellow eyes studying Alyssa. Then, with a dismissive wave, he spoke again. "You are a brave human, Captain, but bravery alone will not save you. Be prepared to face the consequences of your actions. The Xanthel will not stand idly by while you interfere in matters that are not your concern." With a final, chilling look, the hologram flickered off, leaving Alyssa standing on the bridge, her mind racing. "Captain, what should we do?" Lieutenant Rivera asked, her voice filled with concern. Alyssa turned to face her crew, her expression resolute. "We will not back down. We'll continue to help the Iscari, no matter the cost. Earth has always fought for what's right, even when the odds are against us. We're not afraid of threats." Rivera nodded, her eyes reflecting the same determination. "Understood, Captain." Despite the looming threat from the Xanthel Empire, Alyssa remained focused. She knew this was only the beginning. The humans had made their decision, and there was no turning back now. If the galaxy was going to challenge them for standing up for the Iscari, then humanity would meet that challenge head-on. As Alyssa looked out at the stars, a feeling of resolve settled in her chest. They had done what was right, and they would continue to do so. The galaxy might not understand, but the humans knew the importance of standing up for those who had been forgotten, for those who needed help. The Iscari had been abandoned by everyone else, but humanity would not be the next to turn their back. The path ahead would be difficult, and the challenges would grow greater, but Alyssa knew that as long as humanity stood together, they could face anything. The galaxy might not be ready for Earth's intervention, but Earth was ready to make its stand. Days turned into weeks, and the tension between Earth and the powerful empires of the galaxy continued to grow. While Captain Alyssa Grant and her crew were focused on helping the Iscari rebuild, the looming threat of the Xanthel Empire and other galactic powers weighed heavily on their minds. They had made their stand, and now the consequences were beginning to take shape. On the Iscari homeworld, the human crew worked harder than ever. The Iscari, grateful for the humans' help, were learning new ways to heal their planet, grow their crops, and strengthen their cities. Their culture, once thought lost, was beginning to flourish again. Music filled the air, and the sounds of children playing in the streets returned. It was a beautiful sight, one that Alyssa had never imagined would be possible when they first arrived. But the threats from the Xanthel Empire were not something to be taken lightly. Captain Alyssa had received word of military movements near the Iscari system. The Xanthel were making their presence known, and it was clear they didn't intend to let the humans continue their work without interference. One afternoon, as Alyssa stood in the command center of the Concordia, she was joined by Lieutenant Rivera. The mood was tense, and the weight of the situation hung heavy in the air. "Captain, we've received a communication from the Xanthel," Rivera said, her voice tight. "They're demanding that we leave the Iscari system immediately. They've warned us that any further actions will be met with force." Alyssa's mind raced, but she kept her voice steady. "We knew this was coming, but we can't back down now. Not when the Iscari are finally getting the chance they deserve." Rivera nodded. "What should we do?" Alyssa took a deep breath, staring out at the stars. The future of the Iscari, and perhaps of humanity, was hanging in the balance. She had to make the right choice. "We'll respond to their threat, but we won't back away. We've done nothing wrong. We're here to help, not to take anything from them. If they want a fight, we'll give them one. But only if it comes to that." Rivera seemed to understand. "Understood, Captain. I'll prepare our defenses just in case." As the crew continued to monitor the situation, Alyssa met with Vasira, the leader of the Iscari, to discuss their next steps. Vasira had heard the news about the Xanthel's threats, and she was worried. The Iscari were strong in their own way, but they were no match for the Xanthel's military power. "We can't afford to anger the Xanthel," Vasira said, her voice filled with concern. "If they attack, we'll be caught in the middle. We don't have the strength to fight back." Alyssa looked at her with determination. You don't have to fight. We're here, and we won't leave. If the Xanthel want to start a war over this, they'll have to face us. But we're not backing down. Viscera looked hesitant, but then nodded slowly. I trust you, Captain. You have already shown us more than we ever expected. If the humans are willing to stand with us, then we will stand with you. The conversation left Alyssa feeling more confident. She had expected the Iscari to be more afraid of the Xanthel, but Viscera's willingness to stand by her side was a powerful reminder that sometimes true strength comes from unity. That night, as the Concordia sat in orbit around Iscari Prime, Alyssa couldn't help but reflect on the situation. The Xanthel Empire was a massive, unstoppable force in the galaxy. They had crushed entire civilizations without a second thought. Yet here they were, with a small, barely armed crew of humans and a weakened alien race ready to stand up against them. It was an unlikely alliance, but it was one that had the power to change the galaxy. Alyssa knew they couldn't fight the Xanthel head-on, not without risking everything. But there was something she had learned during her time with the Iscari. The galaxy didn't always need weapons to make an impact. Sometimes, the most powerful weapon was the courage to do what was right, even when the odds were stacked against you. The next day, Alyssa sent a message to the Xanthel, demanding that they leave the Iscari alone and allow the humans to continue their work. The message was clear. Earth would not be intimidated, and they would protect the Iscari with everything they had. We will not be moved, Alyssa wrote in the message. If the Xanthel want to fight, they will find that the humans are not so easily defeated. The response came quickly, as expected. The Xanthel's message was filled with threats and warnings, but it was also clear that they were testing the humans. They wanted to see how far Earth would go before backing down. Alyssa's heart raced as she read the message, but she didn't hesitate. She had made her decision. The humans would protect the Iscari, no matter the cost. As she stood on the bridge of the Concordia, staring out into the vastness of space, Alyssa knew that the path ahead would be dangerous. But she also knew that this was their moment. The spark of unity between humans and the Iscari had the power to light up the galaxy, to show everyone that when the galaxy turns its back, Earth will always step up to do what is right. The threat from the Xanthel Empire loomed larger every day. Their fleet had arrived in the Iscari system, a massive show of force designed to intimidate. The Concordia and its crew had been preparing for this moment, but Alyssa Grant knew that no amount of preparation could guarantee their survival. It would take more than technology and firepower. It would take courage, unity, and the will to stand firm in the face of overwhelming odds. Alyssa stood on the bridge of the Concordia, staring out at the stars. The Xanthel fleet had positioned themselves around the Iscari homeworld, their ships casting long shadows across the planet. The message had been clear. They would not allow the humans to stay, and they would destroy anyone who tried to stop them. Lieutenant Rivera walked up to Alyssa's side, her face grim. Captain, they've made their move. We got 3 battleships and dozens of smaller vessels closing in. They're making it clear they want us gone. Alyssa took a deep breath. The decision she made months ago, to help the Iscari, to protect them, had led them here. There was no turning back. We stand our ground, she said, her voice steady despite the weight of the situation. We're not leaving. The Iscari deserve better than what the galaxy has given them. If we have to fight to protect them, we will. Rivera nodded, clearly impressed by Alyssa's resolve. Understood, Captain. I'll prepare our defenses. Alyssa turned to face the rest of the crew. The tension in the air was palpable. They all knew what was at stake. The Concordia wasn't a warship. It was a research vessel, designed for exploration, not combat. But Alyssa had always believed that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their weapons. It was in their ability to adapt, to think outside the box. Listen up, everyone, Alyssa said, her voice carrying through the room. We've got one chance to make a stand. The Xanthel are strong, but they don't know us. They don't know what we're capable of. We'll use every resource we have to protect the Iscari, and send a message to the galaxy. Humanity will not be ignored." The crew nodded, their faces determined. They knew they were about to face something far beyond their training. But they were ready. Meanwhile, on the Iscari homeworld, Vasira and the other leaders were preparing for the worst. The Iscari had always been peaceful, focusing on healing their planet and rebuilding their society. They had never been a warlike people, but they had been forced into a corner by the Xanthel. "Captain, I don't know how we can help," Vasira said, her voice filled with worry. "We're not soldiers. We don't have the strength to fight them off." Alyssa placed a reassuring hand on Vasira's shoulder. "You don't have to fight. We're here for that. But your people have something the Xanthel can never take away: hope. You've already proven that the strength of a people isn't in their weapons, but in their will to survive. That's why we're here. You've got the power to inspire the galaxy, Vasira. Never forget that." Vasira's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, grateful for Alyssa's words. "Thank you, Captain. We'll do whatever we can." The battle began as the Xanthel ships opened fire, their massive weapons raining down on the Concordia and the Iscari planet. The Concordia shook under the impact, but Alyssa remained calm, issuing orders to her crew. "Return fire, but don't engage unless absolutely necessary. We need to buy time for the Iscari to evacuate their civilians to the underground bunkers." The crew of the Concordia worked quickly, firing laser beams and deploying defensive shields to keep the enemy at bay. The Xanthel fleet was relentless, but the humans fought with everything they had. They had no choice. The Iscari were depending on them. On the surface of the planet, the Iscari worked together to move their people to safety. The once quiet cities were now filled with frantic movement as families gathered in shelters, hoping for a safe escape from the battle raging above. But amidst the chaos, there was a sense of unity, a sense that they were not alone. The humans were fighting for them, and they would not let them fall. Hours passed, and the Concordia and the Iscari forces held their ground. Despite their disadvantage, they had something the Xanthel couldn't understand: a determination to protect the innocent, a will to survive. Alyssa stood at the helm of the Concordia, her eyes fixed on the Xanthel ships. The battle was far from over, but they had already achieved something incredible. The galaxy had written off the Iscari as a lost cause, but now, humanity had shown the universe that they would fight for the forgotten. The Xanthel may have been powerful, but they were no match for the strength of unity and hope. Then, as the Xanthel fleet began to retreat, something unexpected happened. One by one, the ships in the fleet turned and began to withdraw, their weapons falling silent. The Concordia and the Iscari forces had done it. They had won, not through sheer force, but through resilience, courage, and the unwavering belief that they could make a difference. Alyssa exhaled a long breath, a feeling of relief washing over her. They had succeeded. The Iscari were safe, for now. But Alyssa knew that this battle was just the beginning. They had stood up for what was right, and they would continue to do so. The galaxy had learned a powerful lesson that day. When the galaxy turns away, humanity will step up. The battle had ended. The skies above the Iscari homeworld were no longer filled with the fiery explosions of warships. Instead, the stars were calm, and the once mighty Xanthel fleet had retreated. The Concordia and the Iscari forces had won, not with sheer strength, but with courage, unity, and an unwavering will to protect the innocent. The galaxy had seen humanity at its best, and now it was time for the Iscari to rebuild. Alyssa Grant stood on the bridge of the Concordia, watching the peaceful sky as the last of the enemy ships vanished into the distance. She had never imagined herself in the middle of such a grand battle, but the Iscari needed her. They needed humanity, and she would not let them down. "Captain, we've received a message from the Iscari leaders," Lieutenant Rivera said, her voice filled with relief. "They're calling this victory a new beginning for their people." Alyssa smiled, though she still felt the weight of everything they had been through. "That's good to hear," she said softly. We did what we had to do, but the real work begins now. The Iscari have a chance to rebuild, and we'll be there to help them." The message from Visera, the Iscari leader, appeared on the screen. She was standing in a large open space, surrounded by her people. The joy and gratitude in her eyes were clear, but so was the determination. The Iscari were not giving up on their future. They were moving forward. "Captain Grant, thank you," Visera said, her voice full of emotion. "Your people have shown us that even when the galaxy turns its back on us, there is still hope. The Iscari owe you a debt we can never fully repay, but we will do everything in our power to make sure our people thrive, now and in the future." Alyssa nodded. "You don't owe us anything. You showed us the strength to keep fighting, and that's all anyone needs. The future is in your hands now." The Iscari leaders had already begun working on their recovery efforts. They started by providing medical care to those who had been injured during the battle. The once crippled cities were being repaired, and shelters were being rebuilt for those who had lost their homes. It was a long road ahead, but Alyssa could see that the Iscari were determined to heal, rebuild, and rise stronger than before. Humanity's role was not over. The Concordia would remain in orbit above the Iscari world for a while longer, offering assistance and helping with the rebuilding efforts. Resources would be shared, technology offered, and guidance given. Humanity would not abandon the Iscari now that the battle was won. As the Concordia helped with the restoration, word began to spread throughout the galaxy about the Iscari's victory and the humans who had helped them. The other alien species, once indifferent or even hostile toward the Iscari, started to take notice. They had been watching the conflict from afar, but now they were seeing something different, a race that had stood tall against impossible odds, protected by humans who refused to back down. The Xanthel Empire had underestimated the resilience of both the Iscari and humanity, and now they were paying the price. The Concordia's victory over the Xanthel sent a clear message. Humanity was not to be ignored. They would fight for what was right, even when it seemed impossible. One day, as Alyssa walked through the Iscari capital, she saw Visera speaking with a group of her people. There was hope in her eyes, and it filled Alyssa with pride. The Iscari were not just surviving, they were thriving. "Captain Grant," Visera called, walking over to her. "We have learned so much from your people. Your strength, your courage, your belief in us. It has given us the will to keep going. We will never forget what you have done." Alyssa smiled. The Iscari have always had the strength within them. They just needed someone to believe in them. Visera nodded. "And now we will believe in ourselves. The galaxy has turned its back on us for too long, but with your help, we will show them that we are not just a forgotten race. We are a force to be reckoned with." Alyssa knew that the Iscari were no longer the helpless, forgotten people they had once been. They were strong, they were resilient, and they had humanity by their side. As the days went by, Alyssa and her crew continued to assist in the rebuilding efforts. They had brought hope to a people who had been cast aside, and now they were watching that hope take root and grow. The Iscari would never forget what humanity had done for them, and in return, they would be allies, working together to create a future where no one would be forgotten. The galaxy had seen what humanity was capable of, and the Iscari had shown them that hope could shine even in the darkest of times. As the Concordia prepared to depart the Iscari homeworld, Alyssa stood on the bridge one last time, looking at the planet below. The Iscari were safe. The battle had been won. And now, a new chapter had begun, for both humanity and the Iscari. "We did it," Alyssa whispered, smiling to herself. "We showed the galaxy that when the stars turn cold, humanity will always step up."